Hey guys, I'm Monica and I just want to talk today about discipline and homeschool and how the two are really important, because if you don't have a discipline in a homeschool setting, you'll go nuts and you'll stop being a homeschooler. You'll just put your kids in school. I've had so many people actually tell me I could never homeschool because I don't think my kids will listen to me, and I just don't think I would have the right amount of discipline, or I don't think I could be around my kids all day, which is really code for I think they'll drive me nuts. And why would they drive you nuts? Because they're not well disciplined, that's why. So that's a big thing for people. And there's going to be a lot of people that are kind of unschoolers, and they're going to say, well, you don't have to have a lot of discipline, just let them do what they want. But then there's a lot of people who just would never be interested in unschooling. And for those of you who would never be interested in that, I would suggest that you can have discipline and your kids can listen to you. But you have to switch your thinking. And I think a lot of the people who would say, oh, I can never discipline my kids, are actually scared to, because they feel like any kind of discipline technique is traumatic. And what got me wanting to make this video today was an article I read, and I've read several like this, basically criticizing timeout. It's a very effective, very kind discipline technique, and they're criticizing it, and I think it's crazy because it works. And it's the mentality that I couldn't homeschool because I won't have the right discipline, they won't listen to me. Well, you know, when your kids, when you put them in school, those teachers are disciplining them. I mean, they're not smacking them around. They're doing things like timeout or maybe other consequences. And they also do positive things, little sticker charts, but there is some discipline. It's there. You know, when you send your kids to school, they're getting it. And so when you say, oh, I couldn't do it at home, I really suspect that you might have the mentality that any kind of discipline is unkind, and you're traumatizing your kid even, like by timeout. And I would suggest that it's better for you to do it. You're going to do it in a more loving way than anybody else. So anyway, these articles are very, very problematic. They say they're alternatives to timeout, and they're not, because timeout is a discipline technique that you do right after a kid misbehaves, whereas these articles are more proactive things that will lessen the likelihood of misbehavior. The only thing is to talk to your child and figure out what they need, and there's a lot of examples where that works, and there's a lot of examples where it doesn't work and you need another technique. You know, as parents, we have all these different techniques, right? Sometimes one technique will work, other times you need something else. And we all know that. And that's the same with timeout. So that in this article that I read, the only technique that I saw that was an alternative was talking to your kid. The other ones were proactive. It was like, go outside, go for a hike, you know, figure out what's triggering your kids. Basically, like, you know, if your kids are hungry or sleepy. I mean, obviously, we're going to try to make sure our kids are well fed and they've got enough sleep. I mean, who wants to deal with a cranky, tired kid? No one wants to deal with that. And that's sort of obvious, but that doesn't negate the fact that every now and again, even if you're a saint about making sure everything in your child's life is perfect, your kids are going to misbehave sometimes, and they need to learn that there's a consequence to that behavior, like an immediate consequence, because when they're little, they're not logical, and they don't look forward to the future. So you have to give them an immediate little consequence, like sometimes one consequence could be timeout. There are other things you can do. This is one idea, and it's very effective for a lot of people. You have to be consistent with it. You have to make them stay in timeout. You can't let the timeout start until they're sitting there. In my family, it's sitting there quietly, and then timeout starts, and they learn self-control. They learn to say, oh, I actually can control myself. I actually can stop screaming. And when I do, it will be over soon. The timeout does two very, very good things. It gives the kid a time to calm down, and it gives the parent time to calm down, which in a homeschool, when you're around your kid all day long, this is so important to calm down, like, because they can really drive you nuts. It's true. And they need to learn self-control, and they learn that by saying, okay, I'm going to calm down so my timeout can start, so I can get out of timeout. And the parent, it's very helpful to have a couple minutes with separation so you can calm down too. So it's a really positive thing for kids to do, for parents, you know, to do for the kids, to teach them. And there's this idea of natural consequences, and I get it, you know, in some ways, like, it makes sense. You know, if a kid is being a little too crazy when they play, the natural consequences, they might scratch their knee, and there's worse things in the world, right? Actually, it probably teaches them better than you constantly harping at them and saying, don't do that, don't do that. I get that. But when it comes down, there's a lot of times where natural consequence is not appropriate. For example, your kid, you have a play date with a friend over like every week, you know, every Wednesday you have a play date, and your kid every Wednesday at the play date will not share, and they're just not nice to the other child. The natural consequence is that you're going to lose a friend. And that is really, that's not something you want to happen. You don't want to teach your kid that friends are disposable, that you can just mistreat them and it's going to be fine. So you want to teach your kid immediately in the moment that whatever behavior that they're doing is not acceptable. Whatever way, it might be timeouts. With your kid that might work, it might be something else, but they have to know right then and there, and you can't let a natural consequence occur in that situation. And a lot of situations are similar where it's just not appropriate. They need to learn that certain behaviors are appropriate. So that just sort of brings it around a full circle to homeschool, and it's just they have to have a certain amount of discipline. If you send them to school, I promise you the teachers are going to enforce rules. What does enforce mean? It means that if you break the rule, there is a consequence. And the consequence isn't you get expelled from school. You know, it is you're going to get in trouble. There's going to be a punishment for misbehaving. And so, yeah, that's just what I wanted to say about this whole idea that timeouts are bad or traumatizing. I think if you think sitting for 3 minutes by yourself is traumatizing, you've lived a really, truly delightful life. You've lived a wonderful, delightful life if you think that sitting for 3 minutes is traumatizing. And like I said, it actually gives your child a chance to learn self-control. And one more thing, this notion that that you need to control like the triggers, like your kids' triggers, like maybe they get really stressed out in a public place and then they go slapping their siblings. I don't know, you know, maybe they're hungry. And so whenever they're hungry, they do things like push people down. Obviously, we're going to try to control these things, right? I mean, you want to feed your kids. You want them to get enough sleep. That's obvious. But going to crazy lengths, like we'll say bringing food with you all the time. First of all, your kid's going to get overweight, and that's unhealthy, really. Second of all, you are kind of robbing your kid of the opportunity to learn self-control in normal life circumstances. And you want them to learn to be able to control themselves because you're raising them to be well-adjusted adults, hopefully. And when you're an adult, you're expected to control yourself, even if you're hungry, even if you're tired. At least that's how I hope, you know, when my children grow up, the generation that they grow up in, I'm a little frightened that people will not be expected to control themselves, you know. But anyway, that's all I have to say about that. I have to say that, you know, if you're interested in homeschooling, but you think that your kids, you just will not be able to have enough discipline, I disagree. I think where there's a will, there's a way. Don't listen to these people that tell you that, you know, don't do any discipline, only do the proactive stuff. Do it. It's good. It's helpful. But sometimes you need to have a little discipline. There needs to be little consequences. And for a little kid, you know, taking a privilege away or time out, it bothers them, and they're going to want to avoid that. They're not going to seek it out. They're not going to say, oh, this is negative behavior, or I want to seek it out. No, they don't. They don't want to seek it out. They don't want it. It actually does work. So you can have discipline. You can have your kids listen to you, and you can do it. I hope you have a great day, and please comment in the comment section and like the video if you thought this was helpful.